welcome to the show this morning. Welcome. This is For the Health of It. And we got a great show today. I'm really excited. Let us talk about some events that are going on here in the Valley this weekend. First, by way of introduction, I'm Dr. Scott Phillips, local chiropractor and owner of Lifestyle Chiropractic and Wellness Center here in the Valley. They're in the Clock Tower building on Main Street. And I will be your personal health care expert for the next hour. And our goal here, of course, is to help you guys become as healthy as you want to be, as healthy as you can be. And today's show is going to really help you out with that. I brought one of my favorite people on today. Her name is Leslie Smoot. She is a local celebrity of sorts. Leslie, you were on TV, yesterday morning, weren't you?
I was on Good Things Utah yesterday, talking about my favorite subject, which is food.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's just something about food. Obviously, is a big part of our health, and it's something that we've talked about in here also. And just by way of fun announcement from last week's show with Rob Kinch on, I got all my plants, or actually all the food that I'm growing in my garden has started to sprout, and so I'm really excited about that. I've used a lot of his tips, and so anyway, so we're going to talk about some food today, but let's go over some of these events that are happening this weekend. The first one we want to really promote is a place down at Tunex. If you guys haven't been to Tunex, it's over on 1240 South Main Street. And this weekend they're doing a customer appreciation celebration. So not only can you get your oil changed for $19.95, which is a great price, but they're going to have food, they're going to do specials, they're going to give out prizes. Basically, if you show up there that morning, and then also we are going to live broadcast out there. Kerry Hobbs is going to be on the show over there on location. He's going to broadcast from about 9:30 to 11:30. So you can go out there and also be a part of our radio station here, and should be a really great event, should be a fun thing. The next one I wanted to talk about is the last Saturday we had some rain, and so we ended up not doing the car wash for the Relay for Life. And so we've talked about this quite a few weeks, but I'm going to talk about it one more time because we've postponed it to this Saturday coming up. And so Relay for Life, it's a American Cancer Society little fundraiser, little celebration for people that have fought cancer, that are fighting cancer currently. It's a great event for our community. And so we're doing a car wash to do some fundraising this weekend. It's out, I believe, still at the Days Market parking lot. Really good cause, and like we said before, it's $7 for one car, $10 for two. So a great easy price to go get your car washed this Saturday. So hopefully,
I think that sounds like fun.
Right? Maybe
what a great thing to support.
Bring your car down, Leslie. We'll get it washed. I think the people washing are not quite professionals, but at least they'll be good with the cars, hopefully. So, so it should be a good event. And then the other one I wanted to just touch on also, and really, it's fun to have Leslie here. It was fun to have Rob here last week, both affiliated with the Real Foods Market. And we're really excited to have people like that on the show. I believe that little place over there does a lot of good for our community. And so they've got tons of events going on. So I want to talk about Rob's again. We talked about it on the show last week, but his gardening club every second Thursday. So the next one coming up is on the 12th of June. He'll be here. He'll be there talking about gardens, and it's over there at the Rivendell garden there off of 650 South, and that is Thursday the 12th, and that'll be at 6:30, and we'll talk about that a little bit more also as it gets closer. But what a great opportunity to go out if you've already planted your garden and you just need some tips to how to keep it alive, how to keep it producing. It'll be a great way to do it, and that's free of charge. So those are kind of the fun articles I want to, or not articles, the fun, we'll talk about our article, but those are the fun events happening in the near future. I want to also get some apology out there. I have been taking calls, and I haven't had my first caller yet. And last week I did, and I didn't answer it. I thought it went to a different line. And so now I feel bad. And so if there's someone out there wanting to call, please feel free. I've tried to write that wrong, and hopefully I'll be able to answer it. So our phone number here is 657-1340. We'll be taking calls all show. And one thing I wanted to prompt you also is if you have an event that we haven't talked about that you'd like announced, feel free to call in and talk about it. Anything health related. I know there's a lot of runs going on, obviously, in the summer. This is a great place to do those, and I'll try to get a list of some of those. But if you have one coming up that you know of, please feel free to call in. You can announce that to us, and we'll get people informed. So let's go to our article today. This is a fun one, and I sent it to Leslie first so she could kind of chime in a little bit with us.
Oh, I thought this was a great article.
So we talk a lot about toxins. We talk a lot about especially what we eat. And other toxins in the environment. But one thing that we don't really talk too much about is aging. Aging is, I think, one of those things that we're always trying to combat. I mean, it's right, the fountain of youth back in Ponce de Leon times. They wanted to always, we want to look younger. And Leslie here looks like she's about 25, so she's done a good job.
Or something.
And so we want to talk about what factors into aging. And you know what, most people, right, when we talk about someone that ages well, we talk about genes, don't we? That's kind of the thing that people mostly say, oh, well, they must have good genes, or their grandma looked young, all that kind of stuff. And so the first thing I wanted to point out in this article is that studies now have taught us only 30% is genetic, meaning that 70% comes from environment.
Isn't that shocking? 30%? That's such a low number. I'm sure we all just assumed it was 80 or 90%.
Exactly. You would think so. I mean,
yeah, you talk to someone who just looks amazing and they go, oh, yeah, I guess I just have good genes. They don't really take any credit for it.
Well, and they should take credit because 70% is environmental. And so what we're doing actually, and what these people are starting to study, and I'll tell you where it was published. This was published in Trends in Molecular Medicine. And we've actually they started to talk more about physiological age instead of just the number.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
It's so true. Yeah.
And we all know people that are 80 that act like they're 50. Mm-hmm. And I have people in my office that are 30 that try to talk like they're 80. Right?
Or walk like, or look like.
And so I think the number itself isn't quite giving us exactly what we want. And the thing that people pointed out, that the article pointed out that was very interesting, is that many medications are age-based, number-based. Right? You say, oh, well, if you're 80 and we're going to put you on a specific medication, we've got to do it a different way because of your age. But if you're 60, we've got to do it a different way if you're 50. But that's what this is saying, is if that person has physiologically aged more, then they should actually be in that consideration instead of the other. So very interesting.
Absolutely true.
And they've actually named these things in our environment that help us age or make us age, or I don't know what you want to call it. But I've got to find.
Well, while you're finding, I think it's so interesting when you just look at skin. Skin reveals our overall health. I mean, think about it. It's our largest organ. And it's the only organ that's completely exposed that we can see.
Right.
And it is so revealing in the terms of our health. Like if we have rash, if we have eczema, if we have bumps, if we have acne, it tells a lot about what's happening on the inside.
Well, and isn't it interesting that it's also these cells turn over the fastest. Mm-hmm. And so the nice thing is, too, is when we start to make positive health changes, skin is almost the first place that we see those changes.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it
because
true?
It turns over so quickly. We talked on the show a little while ago. Every 2 years, you're a completely new person. You've turned over all your cells, right? Your bones are different. Your muscles are different. But the skin is much faster than that, way faster than that. And so I usually tell people, as you start to make positive health changes, really look for it in the skin first. You'll start to notice it's, maybe not quite as dry, maybe not quite as splotchy, like you say. So anyway, these environmental toxins, we have called them gerontogens. And that's kind of a mouthful, but these gerontogens are just things present in the environment that make us age. And so the main thing, or the main places that they've found it, cigarette smoke and UV light. Now, you've seen that before, the old ladies that tanned a lot in their back in the day. They look a little older maybe than they probably ought to. But cigarette smoke, very interesting, because I think we know so many reasons why we shouldn't smoke. I mean, I don't think this is a shock to anyone that, oh, maybe we shouldn't smoke. But here's just one other thing. If you're not worried about the lung cancer and some of the other things, then what about the aging factor? Right? And I think our body decides to finally be done when our physiological age has hit where it needs to be, and not some number, right? Wouldn't that be nice if it said, oh, when you turn 87, that's when you're going to die. But maybe that's true. It's just when your body feels like it's 87.
I think there's a website you can go to. I think it's something like the True Age Calculator,
Huh.
where you can put in all these factors about your diet and lifestyle.
Right.
And it tells you what your true age is. You also talk about your energy level. And all
Right,
this,
right.
And it factors out your true age.
Well, that would be interesting.
Wouldn't it?
So anyway, look out for those things out in the environment. And what I would say is, if people compliment you and say, "Oh, you look so young," then take that as a compliment and say, "Yeah, I've worked hard for it. At least 70% of my work has been has been that, and 30% is genes." But a fun article, and definitely something to kind of pay attention to and look at as you're trying to kind of keep yourself healthy. Our fun fact, this isn't necessarily a fact, this is just something I ran across. And it's really quite strange, but leave it to anyone producing any type of beverage to do something this crazy. So there is a sports drink being made in Japan right now exclusively, that the main ingredient is hornet spit.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Who studies that?
So,
I'd like
so,
to be in
yeah,
there.
so this
in
is
their
very
office.
interesting. So apparently there are like super hornets in Japan. They're like the size of your thumb, and they fly really fast, and they're quite deadly. And so I guess people are studying these hornets and saying, what makes these hornets better hornets than other hornets? And they found this compound, and I'll tell you what it is. It's actually the
Liquid
drink is
gold.
named after this compound. It's VAAM, and VAM, I guess, is how I
Okay.
would say it. I don't know.
Should have been named The Room.
Yeah, exactly. VAM.
Boom.
And so VAM is something when this hornet eats something, it turns something into this paste and then uses that for energy. And so they're taking this paste out and putting it in the sports drink.
Does it
And
work?
there are some studies. I don't know who funded the studies. I imagine the people that made the drink probably funded them. And said that it helps people endure longer, gives them more strength. I don't know. I'm very
Va-boom.
interested. Yeah, exactly. See, if we bring it over here to the States, maybe you'll be in charge of marketing
I'll
it
try it.
as Vavoom. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Apparently now they're making this, they're actually synthesizing it now instead of getting all the hornets and trying to take it from them. So animal activists can be okay about that. But here's the actual name. It's Vespa amino acid mixture. And amino acids are building blocks for your protein, so I can understand how that could be for an athlete. But I thought that was interesting. I rode my bike to work today, and I thought if I had some VAM or Vavoom, if we want to call it that, maybe I could have gotten here faster. I don't know. I will say that as I was riding, someone did say I was riding very quickly, very fast. I said, "Wow, you're fast." Now, he was riding to the elementary school and probably was in first grade.
Oh, that's cute.
But I'll take it, right? It's still a compliment.
You were faster than a young child. That's
Faster
great.
than I don't know if I should be too excited about that. But so there you go. If you visit Japan and you're interested in hornet spit, that's your drink. And who knows, maybe it'll make you faster and
Do
stronger.
not test this at home.
No, do
It
not.
could be dangerous.
Please don't. Those hornets that you have outside, because we've got them, they're a little bit harder they're a little temperamental, I would say. So yeah, don't try to grab that. I would order the drink itself. I'm excited about our joke today because this one's actually, it drew laughter from the people that I tried it on instead of eye rolling. So here we go.
We have great expectations now.
I
this
want
better
you
be
to.
good.
So a woman and man go to a doctor, The man is sick, and so he runs a bunch of tests, and they go to get the test results. And the doctor calls the wife in to his office and says, I need to talk to you privately. So the wife says, okay. She comes in. Doctor sits him down. And the doctor has a very serious air about him. You can tell that something is not right. He says, your husband has a very serious condition. He said it's a very far gone stress-related condition, that if we don't take care of it, then he could die. In fact, he probably will die if he doesn't take care of it. So he says, if you need to follow this strict regimen. That's why I brought you in here. Every morning, let him sleep in as long as he can, and as long as he wants to. When he wakes up, make sure there's a nice, healthy, large breakfast waiting for him. After breakfast, kind of let him watch TV or do whatever he does. Don't ask anything of him, right? We can't have him doing any chores. We can't have him doing anything stressful. Lunchtime, make him a nice, healthy lunch. And at dinner time also, do something really special, something that he really likes. Again, make sure you're doing all the housework, back rubs, foot rubs, those types of things. And then in the evening time, make sure about 3 to 4 times a week that you make sure that you two make love. And he said, if you can follow this regimen for the next 10 to 12 months, then we think he should get over this condition and he should be okay. And she says, thank you, doctor, and they leave, and they get back in the car, and they're driving home. And the husband's very curious, of course. He says, honey, what did the doctor have to say? She said, oh, he says you're going to die.
What? Ouch.
So,
does that mean she's not willing to do it?
You know, I'm not sure what that has to say about their marriage, but I will say that my wife laughed at that also, and she said, yeah, that's what I would say. So I don't, I don't know.
No, I'd say that sounds like a lot of really good medicine.
It seems like Leslie...
And it would be good for both
It seems
people.
like Leslie here would be more willing to... So if Leslie's husband is listening... then good work, because my wife said she would have the same reaction. Oh,
Thanks
my
for
goodness.
The joke.
So here we go on a more serious note. Let's get some people healthier today.
All right.
Let's talk some good nutrition, some good food. I'm just curious in general, Leslie, and we've known each other for a few years now. And I remember the first time I met you, I went to a class of yours that you were teaching over at the Zermatt. You're doing some cooking classes. And really, really fantastic information. I believe it was, again, you're all about the real food. You're all about real ingredients. And so I'm always behind people that we don't talk about calories. We don't talk about this and that. We talk about just get God-made good food into your body.
Yep.
Right? And
it's true.
I think that's why we're such good friends. But I kind of wanted to just ask you sort of along your own journey, what brought the passion out in you? What makes you want to do this every day? What's your drive behind really helping people realize how they should eat and what they should eat?
Well, there are a couple of parts to my passion and how it all began. About, I don't know, 8 years ago, it's about the time that I moved up here to Midway, I started thinking more about what I was eating and started experimenting with my own diet. And I did a cleanse, and it was about a 28-day cleanse, and I felt like $1,000,000 by the time that cleanse ended. I had the energy that I once had when I was in my 20s. And when I came off that cleanse and went back to some of my old eating habits, I went from feeling amazing to food coma. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I felt so good. I went, wow, look what I've been missing. And then when I reverted back, I was like, no. Now I know what feeling good is. It's not in my past. I can have that now.
Right.
And I wanted it again. And so I started to research food at a much more intense level than I ever had. And it was all just a matter of how I wanted to feel.
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, everyone has to ask themselves, how do you want to feel? How do you feel right now?
Sure.
Are you tired? Do you have brain fog? Are you irritable? Are you moody? You know?
Right.
And do you like the state that you're in? Because when I realized it was in my control, it was a game changer for me. And so I was motivated by how I felt to keep going and to keep studying it.
You know, and we've talked on this show even, especially with some of our other food people, that people don't really a lot of times tie how they feel to what they eat. Would you say that's true?
I know, but think about it. We eat, sleep, and poop. Okay, just like babies.
That's pretty basic.
We're not that complicated.
Right.
And to ignore food, the fuel that we put into our system every day, to ignore that,
Yeah.
I think is really ignorance.
Or just to think it's no big deal.
Yeah, to
You know,
think that
say,
it's
oh,
no
well,
big
I can
deal.
eat this, I can eat that, it'll be fine.
Right.
But then 2 hours later after we eat, we feel like trash and we think, oh, it might be, a headache comes on. Oh, it's my afternoon headache. It's because I've got too much work to do or whatever.
Right.
But we sometimes don't really necessarily correlate it to say, hey, but look what you just fed yourself. Look what you just gave your body to turn into new cells and to turn into things. And half of it doesn't even recognize.
Yeah.
And so we talk about the idea of real food. And I called you on Facebook. I called you a real food junkie. In fact, this show is called Secrets from a Real Food Junkie.
Uh-huh.
And I hope that doesn't offend you at all.
No.
But really, I think that's what you are. I mean, you really just delight in real food. And then it was so fun because, like I say, when we met, you didn't work for Real Foods.
Nope.
But you do now. And I thought, what a great... When I heard that you were working there, I thought, what a great marriage, because you love real food and their name is Real Food. So here you go.
Right.
So tell me how you hooked up with them, kind of what your mission is, being in charge of what you're in charge of over there, and basically why it's such a great fit for you.
Okay. It is a fabulous fit for a lot of reasons. Okay. And I just want to point out that why I get so excited about food, because before there was medicine, there was food. And so really we're going way back to the basics. And I think I came from a place where, we have a lot of doctors in the family. The mentality that I've grown up with was, if you have a problem, you go to the expert, you go to the doctor, and they'll tell you what to do.
Right.
I didn't have any idea that I could figure it out myself.
Right.
And so when I started discovering, hey, wait a minute, before there was medicine, there was food. Food is truly a powerful medicine.
Right.
And when I started experimenting on that theory, I became my own expert, if you will.
Right.
And yeah, I guess you could say I became evangelical about the whole thing, because everywhere I went, I was telling people how powerful food was. And
Hallelujah. We can, yeah, for sure.
can you believe what we can do? So there I was teaching classes up at Zermatt Resort, and I had invited Rhett Roberts, the founder of Real Foods Market. And in fact, he's a big part of why Real Salt does what they do. And if you don't know Real Salt is the salt that's mined here in Utah, in Redmond, Utah. There's this wonderful underground salt mine, and they extract the salt. It comes out in these big, massive chunks of solid rock.
Yeah.
And rather than going through a refining process and extracting all the minerals for other byproducts that they could make a lot of money on,
Right.
instead of doing that, they just crush that salt rock and bottle it. And it's actually the most beautiful salt and tastiest salt that you can get, because it has all the minerals in there. And so he had the wisdom to say, I don't think this should be refined and processed.
Right.
I think it should stay the way it is. And there was a lot of wisdom in that well before he knew the science behind it.
Sure.
And so that's how Real Salt began. And then he started to think about food and said, well, wait a minute. If salt is better for you unrefined, what about the food we're eating? Is it better to go back to the raw milk instead of the processed pasteurized milk? And what other foods are we eating that we might be processing that maybe we don't need to? And maybe the processing is not serving us well. Maybe it's robbing us from nutrients. And so he started experimenting on that theory and created Real Foods Market. Well, when I learned about Real Foods Market and why they started, and when I learned that they only bring in food that's real, it's minimally processed, it doesn't have the additives, preservatives, the MSG, the high fructose corn syrup. And when I realized they didn't have that, I really fell in love with their market philosophy.
Sure.
Because in my own journey, as I kept trying to refine what made me feel better, it all of the processed food just dropped off the plate.
Right.
Because if I would go out and eat French fries, guess what? My energy went down. No more French fries. Okay, well, let's just have the hamburger. Well, something about the hamburger didn't make me feel too good, and I couldn't tell if it was the beef or the bun.
Right.
And so I had to figure that out. And I, of course, used to love Pop-Tarts and Cheetos and soda pop and Snickers. Okay, that was my lifestyle. And as I started eliminating things that robbed me of my energy and just kept eating the things that increased my energy, I found that all those things disappeared. And then I found that I was avoiding food with MSG because I was sensitive to it. And I was avoiding anything with high fructose corn syrup. Again, it didn't make me feel too good.
Yeah.
Well, so I come to find out that this grocery store doesn't bring in any of those things. Well, it made my grocery shopping a breeze.
Right.
And I was thrilled because, you become a hunter-gatherer,
Exactly.
right? Because you're like, oh, I got to find the food that energizes me. And it's really hard to find in a typical grocery store.
Right.
Because some of our food is made to be shelf-stable in it. So it has all these unnecessary additives and preservatives that create a body burden and downshift our energy. So when I found out about Real Foods Market, it was a dream come true. I couldn't believe I could find it in Utah. In fact, I had traveled back to New York City. I had gone to San Francisco and everything in between and looked at all the health food stores. No one had a philosophy as awesome as Real Foods. So I became a fan. I invited Rhett Roberts to come up and teach a couple of classes up at Zermatt Resort. And you really have a lot of fun talking to like-minded people. And so I would pick his brain and find out why he started and what he thought about food. And the more we talked, I think the more we just kind of developed a mutual friendship. And so at some point in the course of that friendship, he said, hey, I think you should start working over here at Real Foods Market. And I said, no, not interested. I love your store. I'll promote it like crazy. But I didn't want that. I didn't want a job.
Right.
My background actually is 20 years of film experience. I'd pick up a show and work for a little while and then not. So while I loved food, I didn't want to make food my job.
Yeah.
And so I felt very content and happy with my current career. But after he asked a few times and after I started to realize that, I don't know, I guess maybe I just hope that I can make a difference in people's lives.
Sure.
And that if it made this much of a difference for me, maybe if I was involved in a company like that I could help make a difference for other people. So that's why I joined up with them. And that's why I go to Good Things Utah. And that's why I was willing to come on the radio show today. Because I love telling people about it and teaching and watching people discover how food can change their life in a powerful way. So yeah, in the last couple years, I've also become a holistic health coach.
Good.
And so I can take on clients and help them work through their challenges. One of the first things I noticed when I changed my diet is that I had been quite addicted to sugar.
Sure.
And so when I got off of sugar, you have ups and downs that come from the withdrawal.
Right.
Same with caffeine. Same with carbohydrates. Oh, I was so carb addicted.
Right.
And so it's really fun and rewarding for me now to work with people and help them get through that. And it doesn't take long, 5 days to 2 weeks at the max. And those addictions are gone.
Wow.
And so that's the exciting, fun stuff.
Well, you do a great job, and really you are very inspiring. And so let's get some good information out there. Let's get these people again. I love that you say you can become your own expert, and I think that's definitely a goal of this show is to get people these real, tangible ideas that they can use day to day, instead of having to go somewhere and have someone force something down their throat. Say, hey, here's some ideas. And so that's kind of today. Let's get some of these secrets out. Let's get some of these ideas so people can start today and say, hey, if I start changing these little things, I'm going to notice even today and tonight how I sleep a difference. And so the first thing I wanted to bring up was kind of the first thing that we even talked about when we thought about doing this show was this new idea on saturated fats. And I say new because it's new in the mainstream. But when I had Melissa Milam on, we actually read an article about it, and we were talking about it. But my question to you is, how long have you known that saturated fats we're getting such a bad rap, right? Being unfairly discriminated against.
Well, it's interesting because I think I grew up with that philosophy, don't eat saturated fats.
Right.
I remember my grandfather died at 72 and the family was saying it's because he had bacon every morning for breakfast. That's what gave him the heart attack.
Right.
And so it was definitely the ongoing theory that I experienced growing up. So one of the first things that I learned about when I started studying food deeply 8 years ago, I read something from Mary Enig, E-N-I-G. She's a lipid specialist. And She's one of the founders of the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Right.
A great group if you ever really want to study fats and how they affect our body. And she was saying, wait a minute, saturated fats, our body needs them. And
Yeah.
when you look at when we all became fat phobic, all right, it increased depression, it increased anxiety. And why did that happen? Well, our brain is fatty tissue, and when we starve our brain of fats, we create problems and imbalances in the brain. And so we're not nourishing the brain. We're really we're starving our brain.
Right.
And she was pointing these things out. And she was also pointing out the studies that were initially done and saying, you know what, it wasn't the fat, folks. And I wish I could remember the details of her studies, but her books are really profound. So if you look her up, she's great. And so that I loved. I loved hearing that because I think intuitively we know that man has been eating animal food for thousands of years.
Right.
And to remove all the animal food does that really make sense?
Yeah.
Is that really where the problem lies? I don't think
Well,
so.
and we haven't gotten healthier, right? I mean, from the inception of a low-fat diet,
Right.
we've pretty much gotten from that point on quite sicker.
Yes.
Heart disease hasn't decreased.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's one thing, and we're going to go into coconut oil in a little while because I know you're definitely a coconut oil person.
I better say one thing before we leave
please.
fats, though, and saturated fats and animal products in general. I'm finding in my research that the biggest difference comes from the quality of the animal fats that you're consuming. Beef that's grass-fed, grass-finished, that's raised in its natural diet, on its natural diet and lives in its natural habitat. The meat that comes from an animal like that is 10 times or more, I'm being non-exaggerating.
Right.
Okay, better for you than the factory farmed animals.
Right.
Okay, where they're not getting their natural diet, they don't live in a natural habitat, they're sick, they're not well. So meat that comes in those circumstances is even anti-nutrient.
Right.
It contains a lot of toxins and creates a great deal of inflammation. So when they study these things, they need to be looking at the highest quality meat and the lowest quality meat and see what differences are happening in the body from those that are consuming it. And the difference is night and day.
Definitely. And I know, people that talk about omega fats, right? Omega-3s, omega-6s.
Yeah.
We like the omega-3s. We think, we can only get in fish. When you get good when we get good, grass-fed, all that kind of stuff, those are
natural.
actually quite high in omega-3 fatty
Yeah.
acids.
Yeah, the meats, the eggs, they'll have an omega-3, omega-6 ratio that's equal.
Right.
Okay, when it's raised properly. When it's not, when it's factory farmed, the omega-6 goes sky high and the omega-3 drops.
Right.
And that imbalance is what creates a great deal of inflammation and doesn't nourish the brain properly.
Exactly. And omega-6 are very pro-inflammatory, and omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. And so when you mess that ratio up, for sure. But definitely the quality, and I think that's one of the bases of Real Foods Market, to bring in that quality food and bring in the quality meat.
Yeah, we talk to all the farmers. We find out how they raise them, what they feed them, all the way to the end.
Right.
Because, a lot of people, we call this greenwashing. They'll say, oh, yeah, my cows are grass-fed. Well, guess what? Cows start out on grass.
Sure.
Every cow has to. And so to say they're grass-fed, you really have to dig deeper and ask more questions. Okay, and what else are they getting in their diet?
And what else are they eating?
Do you ever take them on to grain to bulk them up right before?
To get the fat, to get sure.
I heard the most awful thing recently about a farmer who in Utah, I will not name because I think that's just mean.
Sure.
But it happens, all right, is giving their cows, in order to fatten them up, all the leftover baked goods from a local place. So they're just giving them carb to fatten them up. And so, we ask a lot of important questions to make sure
that... So if you buy your meat from a guy next to a bakery, perhaps
watch out. It might be a bad alliance.
It's kind of like the Chinese food next to the animal hospital, right? You just want to avoid some of these situations.
Scott.
Let's talk. I know you go to food conventions, which I think is very cool. Tell me about kind of the trends, right? Because you go to Smith's now, you go to some of these other grocery stores, and a lot of these used to be, big labels, that kind of stuff. They're starting to roll out their own natural products. They're trying to and so my curiosity is, where do you see the trend going in food? Is it just a specific group? Are many companies now trying to cater towards this healthier eating style? And is it a good thing, right? Or are they using that as a way to promote their food but still hiding bad stuff in it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I go to Expo West every year in the spring, and that it's like in February. Expo West is located in Los Angeles, and they hold it at their great big convention center, and
Sure.
they have rows and rows and rows of all the latest and greatest health food products, whether it's supplements or whether it's actual food.
Right.
And so this is where anyone that's creating anything that's in the health food grocery stores wants to be. And this year, two of the biggest things, one was gluten-free and the other was all over the place. They had big signs. We are gluten-free,
Right.
gluten-free, gluten-free. Okay. And then the other sign we saw everywhere at this event. And this was a huge change pattern over the last 3 years. It's gradually increased, but this was by far the most predominant, and it is non-GMO, non-genetically modified foods. And it's really important in the health food world that people understand that these are not trends. These are important issues that have come up in our society, and that's why these were really popular at the expo. So I was just going to give you some interesting information about gluten-free. 30% of U.S. adults are trying to reduce or eliminate gluten from their diets.
30%.
30%. That's huge.
That's a large
number. 1 in 3.
number.
Yeah, we're finally starting to see a lot of restaurants saying, "Yeah, we have gluten-free items."
Right.
Instead of, "You want what?
You want what?
You need?
What
huh?"
does that mean?
Yeah. So this is an emerging market, and it's hot. It's not a trend. I think it's here for a while.
Yeah.
I think we're having some. It's really just that our bodies haven't been able to tolerate the high sugar, high carbohydrate diet that we've been exposed to for decades, and it's caught up to us. And we have got to, in order to feel better, get the high carbs out of the system. And gluten has a few things that make it complex for us to break down. So when people get off of it, they feel better.
Right. Now, my question with gluten, we're going to skip a little bit what I was going to talk about, but I want to go to the gluten-free aspect because I know it's very, very trendy.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like you say, 30% now they're trying to eliminate the gluten from the diet. Now, my experience has been, and I've seen now some articles too, just reading some things and seeing, hey, this is a very popular thing, but maybe it should or should not be. Obviously, someone that's diagnosed with celiac disease, that's an actual gluten intolerance. It's
like a prescription.
It's
they
the
have
microvilli in the intestines not able to break it down. It's bad news. It's not a good thing.
No.
But so a lot of these people say, "Oh, I'm gluten intolerant," and they'll almost self-diagnose themselves with celiac disease. And so I'm seeing a lot of these research articles coming out and saying, "Oh, you don't have celiac. You're just whining about gluten," right? I don't know what it is, but what I'll tell you in my experience, and so you can kind of tell me what you think about this, but the interesting thing, and you bring this up, right? You say, well, gluten in and of itself is hard to break down, but we eat so much of it, right? There's so much sugar, there's so many carbohydrates, and actually 2 weeks ago we talked about the saturated fat article that said we started doing these high carbs when fat came way down, right? We said, hey, we need to do low fat. We started introducing high carbohydrate.
Yes, we did.
Right, and so that
and
really
extra
is,
sugar, so it would taste good.
And exactly,
because no fat was present.
Right, and so
and
we
it doesn't taste
we
good
need some
without
taste,
fat.
right?
Yeah.
So let's get some sugar in there. And so I think a lot of the people that I talk to say, "Oh, I needed to go off gluten. I feel so much better." And I say, "Well, how are you eating beforehand?" And you look at it and you say, "Standard American Diet," right? SAD, which I love that acronym
because it's kind of true.
It's sad that what we eat, but Standard American Diet wise, if you go off gluten, it takes everything out that you would eat that is harmful, right? Most things. Fast food's out.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't seen gluten-free at McDonald's yet. It might be
Watch
on the
out,
way.
they're
It might be
coming.
on the way, so don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it takes that out. It takes most of your processed food out, right?
Yeah.
Lunchables is something I have a crusade against, and it's not gluten-free. Of course, that might change. But all of these very processed, highly processed,
Right.
they have gluten in them,
They do. Well, even the dessert category, let's say you want to make brownies and you're used to buying brownies in a box.
Right.
If you buy the gluten-free version of brownie in a box,
Right.
it's not going to have the hydrogenated oils.
Exactly.
So you're right. It has fewer toxins.
So I guess my question is, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't go gluten-free. I think, like I say, because we're so taxed that way. But if someone were to, instead of completely taking gluten out or thinking that they have to be off gluten their whole lives, right? Is there a way to even say, okay, we're gonna decrease all the processed stuff, maybe go gluten-free for a little while to kind of get our systems recharged, and then go back to the really good stuff? Is there hope for someone that likes to eat gluten to say, hey, if you start the whole wheat stuff, the whole grains, that kind of thing, or is our body or is our nutrition just so far past that it's a better idea to just be off?
I think that's a good question, and I just want to clarify. There's two different categories. As you've already mentioned, the celiacs. If you're a diagnosed celiac,
no gluten.
Follow your prescription, which is stay off gluten, and be grateful
but
that you don't have a long list of real prescription meds that you have to
right,
take.
Right,
okay?
exactly.
Just be happy that you can get by without gluten and feel good.
Yeah.
So setting the group of celiacs aside, let's look at people that tend to be gluten intolerant.
Right.
They don't handle it very well, or they notice that their energy decreases with gluten and their brain fog increases with gluten, so they're motivated to get off. And so when they change and get the gluten out and they feel better, that alone, like I was saying for myself, is very motivating.
Sure.
But then there's that longing. There's that emotional connection we have with bread.
A big emotional connection.
And we remember grandma or some other person that we love making bread, and we walk in the house and it smells amazing, and we can bite into that bread. And I'll be honest, gluten-free bread doesn't serve that emotional side. It doesn't smell as good. It doesn't taste as good. Some bakeries are getting better, but can they eventually at some point? Yes, they can. Part of the problem that people are having today is a leaky gut, and when we have gluten, it makes it worse.
Right.
And so you have to clean the system out, go through a cleanse, clean the gut up by having a set diet for a certain period of time. Once you get your system back into shape, it's very reasonable to say that, yeah, you can have your homemade bread.
Sure.
Okay. I'm saying homemade because bread, all bread is not created equal. You can go to the grocery store, you can pick up some bread, and it has 25 ingredients, and you can't name most of those.
Most of them, exactly.
Yes. Or you can make homemade bread or buy it from a bakery that makes homemade bread, and there are 5 ingredients, and you're like, yep, if I was making bread, that's what I would use.
That's what I'd put in, sure.
Yeah, so I would say go back to that. There are also some really remarkable bakers that do naturally leavened bread or true sourdough bread, and that is the best. I hear from people that are intolerant to gluten that they can actually go over to Europe where they make these beautiful sourdough
and
breads.
be fine.
And they're not only fine, they can eat it and feel great. And when you're on vacation, you're really careful not to let your energy levels drop if you're feeling good.
Sure.
So these are people that have eaten it with apprehension and then been delighted to find that
Isn't that interesting?
They could tolerate it. Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely if you're feeling that push, if you're feeling that motivation, I think for sure. So many people that I talk to, and this has been my own experience also, our religious health experience, right, that happens with food, happens on some sort of cleanse. I was on a raw cleanse myself, and that's sort of the same thing. And so I think definitely if you're feeling in that category, hey, I feel like maybe I should go off gluten, I think do it, right?
Yeah.
Let's do some sort of cleanse. Let's help the system clean itself out. And then once you start to feel really good, see if you can reintroduce it in its good forms.
Right.
Right. And not it doesn't mean it's time to go back to fast food. But so you'll eat that and realize, wait, I don't feel as good as I did before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting thing. I cannot believe how fast time is going by, Leslie. So let's get to some really good stuff for sure. Not that wasn't good, but I like asking secrets and questions and things like that. I talk about 5 ingredients that I avoid, right? When the very first show we had, I talked about these and why I avoid them, and I'll tell you the 5 because I want you to either agree or disagree or add or delete, right?
Okay.
Number 1 is high fructose corn syrup. You've already said that, so I think we're going to agree.
Yep.
Number 2 is our hydrogenated oils and our trans fat. Again, American Dietary Association says there's no healthy amount of that we can have in our diet. There's no tolerable amount.
No, that should be out. In fact, in New York City and in restaurants in back east,
Yeah.
they've pulled them out, and it's against the law to put this stuff
And the
in the
FDA
food.
is hopefully trying to ban it anyway.
And it's
so
coming
hopefully-
across the nation, so we
which
might
will
as
be
well
good.
just realize
be done
it's
with
toxic.
It really
Get
really
off of it.
is, for sure. Number 3 is our MSG, which you've said again. One that's illegal in many countries that isn't yet here. I'm not sure. I did see a bag of Doritos at Costco that said it did not have MSG in it, which I was interested in.
Wow.
Again, the trends,
Good.
right? Some of
Okay.
these still had tons of food coloring and stuff like that. We'll talk about the other stuff. But I thought, okay, Doritos, good work. Take the MSG out. Number 4 is any of our artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
Right, we call them neurotoxins, things like that. And then number 5 is food colorings in general, especially for the kids.
Absolutely.
And so those are the 5 that I say, if you're going grocery shopping, again, not at Real Foods, because if you went there, you wouldn't have to look for it. But if you're going just generally in the grocery store, those are good 5 things to say, hey, I'm going to keep those out of my diet.
Excellent.
Anything that you have to add or delete or any other ingredients that you see, again, this is a list that hasn't changed in a little
No,
while.
it's a great list. And I remember when I first learned that list, I was a little overwhelmed, and I'll tell you why. Because it was in the spring, and I was getting ready to put together Easter baskets for my kids. And guess what? I was all of a sudden at a loss because my Easter baskets used to contain a lot of candy.
Right.
It used to have the hydrogenated oils,
All of
and
it,
it used to have the food coloring. And it's a real challenge for a parent if you're trying to celebrate a holiday or if you're trying to celebrate a birthday to not have these foods. And so I had to shift my thinking, create a new normal. And here's what we did. Instead of filling our Easter baskets full of candy, we started looking at the toys and things that they could really use, like socks and hair clips and things that might be fun for them, like a jump rope or a Chinese jump rope, fun things so I could fit them into the little plastic eggs so we could still celebrate the holiday. And it wasn't a bunch of candy.
Yeah.
And you know what? The kids were delighted. Here's the other funny thing. We are attracted to the food coloring because it's in our DNA, honestly. We're attracted to brightly colored things.
Right.
And so I would put in, for the kids as treats, instead of the candy, oranges and strawberries and raspberries. And all of a sudden they're like, Mom, do you know how good raspberries are?
With the vibrant colors, because it's a natural color. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's just some simple things that you can do.
So my question then to you is, because those are my favorite ingredients to avoid, but I know you, when you make things and you're putting together food yourself, is there stuff that you like to have in the recipes themselves, right? Is there something that you add specifically and say, hey, my food should have this, or that? I mean, are there commonalities there?
Well, here are some things, and you know what? This is great because this question is going to tie us back to this aging document that we started with.
Right.
Okay? The foods that I try to make sure I add in a lot of raw foods.
Right.
I try to have that at the top of my mind. Am I getting raw foods in the morning, fresh fruit, for example? Am I getting raw foods at lunch, a really good salad? Again, at dinner, am I getting raw foods in? And the reason is because there's a lot of water naturally in the raw foods.
Right.
And our body needs to stay hydrated, not just from drinking water all day, but also from food that contains a lot of water. And now that it's summer, watermelon is like my best friend. I will probably eat a half a watermelon every day all summer if I can. And it's wonderful because it draws the water into our digestive system where we need it. And so there's like these really great medicinal purposes. So I also think raw foods are great because they're high in phytonutrients. They protect us from free radical damage. They help us eliminate fat. They have, that I mentioned, the antioxidants. They protect us from cancer. They protect us from bone loss. And so these are things that I try to do. And when I started studying food and started looking at people's skin, when they eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of plant-based food, their skin looks remarkable.
Sure.
It kind of has this golden glow to it. And there's a reason for that. And it's because of all those things that I mentioned. So for me, yes, I try to eat a lot of foods that are raw or just that are plant-based, okay? But the other thing I also try to do is look for good, healthy fats and foods with minerals. And those are two separate things. So the good fats are going to come from our nuts and our seeds,
right,
and our healthy things with oil. So whether that's going to be avocado or olive oil or coconut oil, that makes a real difference for your energy, for your clarity of mind, and on your skin. It'll help you look really good. But the minerals, If you know what I want to do, Scott?
Tell me.
Cat's out of the bag.
I'm ready.
You know, if I could come up with a cleanse that would just be a shocker, where it would really grab people's attention,
yeah.
it would be the bone broth cleanse.
Okay.
Okay.
I like
and
it.
here's why. Because bone broth is so mineral rich. It's so nutritive to our body.
Right.
Because you've boiled the bones. Bones heal bones.
Right.
You've put in the joints. Let's say we're doing a chicken. You've got joints, you've got cartilage,
Cartilage,
you've
all
got
that stuff.
skin,
Sure.
you have bones. Okay, if you want good skin, guess what? Skin heals skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and so it's so nutritive. It's so full of minerals that it could be really profound if you did bone broth for 30 days. Now, don't do that yet, anyone, because I've never studied it to the extent where I've never tried that myself.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it would make a really great cleanse.
I
kind of
like it.
say that jokingly, but bone broth is very powerful.
That's where all the minerals things come from.
Yep.
Very cool. I asked you a little bit about ingredient swapping, right? We have these recipes that we just love, that we've, like you say, the breads and things like that we've grown up with, the brownies, things that we want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily want to go off the reservation, so to speak, and just blow out all the healthy choices that we're trying to make. So one thing I try to help people with is, when you are faced with a recipe that you want to kind of tweak a little bit, there are things that you can change.
Yeah.
Right? And things that you can add, things you can take away, things you can swap. And so I guess for me, and a question then to you would be, if you came across a recipe, someone says, Leslie, I have this recipe for this food that I just love that I want to make, but I want to make it healthier. And they hand you the recipe, right? What's the first thing you look at? What are the things that you look for? And how do you transform? I know that's something that you do, so I know this isn't a foreign question to you, but
No, it's
what do you
not
usually
foreign.
do?
Well, first of all, generally speaking, the recipes that get handed to me are the recipes that have been in the family a while.
Right.
And they are the recipes that became popular when fat was unpopular.
Taken away.
The first thing I look for is, what fats are they using? Are they using margarine? Are they using shortening?
Shortening, sure.
Let's take those out. Replace it with real butter. You might use olive oil. Don't use vegetable oil. Don't use canola. Those are very highly inflammatory.
Right.
So coconut oil is a wonderful replacement.
Right.
Like I said, butter is a wonderful replacement. And so the fats are the first thing I look at.
Well, and I think people need to realize that shortening, margarine, all those things were actually produced because butter made it so good. And it wasn't the same when you put an oil in, and so they said, well, let's make this trans fat, this strange hybrid of oils, and to make it act like butter but not be butter.
Exactly.
And so I think when you do add those, the saturated ones, the coconut oil, the butter, that actually makes it taste better, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. They will taste so much better. Yeah. So that's the pleasant surprise, is you can upgrade your recipes.
Right.
By swapping out the poor quality foods for better quality food, and it's going to taste better.
Now, if you need an oil, this is another question I had, is there a place that oil needs to be there instead of a butter or coconut oil? And if so, right, again, coconut oil being saturated, is olive the best choice? Is it the only choice? What would you do in the circumstance of needing an oil? Because, like I say, canola and vegetable kind of not really our best choice. Let's get something better. But I know that olive also doesn't have quite the high heat tolerance that some of the other ones do.
Yeah, you know, this really becomes situational, and I just want to put a plug in for the cooking classes, because I do
please.
teach
No,
cooking
I've got that
classes,
on there, exactly.
and would love for people to come, because this is where we just get right into the nitty gritty, and it's so fun. So if you're going to mention that at the end, that's great. But what I would do is look at what you're cooking. If this is something like you're putting meat in a skillet, and olive oil is not a good choice because you can't handle the high temperatures, go ahead and use coconut oil.
Okay.
You could also use peanut oil. You could also use sesame oil. I don't use peanut oil in my house. I've got a child that's highly allergic to peanut.
Yeah, so you probably don't.
Doesn't come close to my house.
I'd imagine
But
not.
sesame oil we will use.
Okay, very cool. I also want to talk about the kids cooking classes that you guys are running this summer, and so we'll put that in there too. But just other things to switch out. Sugar is one that I'm very interested in, because so many of these recipes have a lot of sugar. And the first thing we started doing before we swapped anything out was we actually would half the sugar.
That's a great idea.
If it said 1 cup of sugar, we put in half a cup, and honestly, we never noticed the difference.
I know it. Isn't that so true?
And so that's the first thing I say is if there's sugar in it and you just love your sugar, just half it and see what happens.
Go with half.
But I think are there other things that then we can swap out? And I actually read something on your Facebook page where you had this kind of do this instead of that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was a plug in there for raw honey instead, that kind of thing. Tell me, and if there is, how does it work out swapping rice? Because sugar is very granulated, honey is more of a liquid.
Yeah, you can use honey. I like to use maple syrup. That's probably my number one choice if I'm using a liquid, because maple syrup does work well for baked goods. Here's another trick. You can reduce your fat by half, and if it calls for 1 cup butter, you use a half a cup butter and a half a cup of applesauce.
Right, okay. I've heard the applesauce.
That works beautifully.
Cool.
It works beautifully. You cannot use all applesauce. That won't work. But you can reduce your fat by half.
You just want to eat applesauce. But you do whatever the fat is, you do the half and then put in the applesauce.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Can I just say something about sugar? I was shocked because I usually get the raw milk from Real Foods Market. I had to go buy regular grocery store milk because we were doing a taste comparison between grocery store milk and raw milk.
Sure.
I haven't shopped for grocery store milk in years. Okay, so
I
there I
can't
go.
remember the last time I got a
walk in the store, I
gallon of
pick it
milk.
up, I go to wring it out. Okay, no big deal. Shocked when I did the taste test and the person that was testing it goes, yeah, well, this one has so much sugar that it actually tastes better, and they're pointing to the grocery store milk.
Right.
And I'm like,
that
what?
It's sweetened.
And I turned the label around.
Yeah.
And they have added sugar to
Just
milk.
to your grocery store milk.
It's not just milk. It's
Good
milk
heavens.
plus sugar. And I went, I had no idea. But I'm not surprised because in America we sugar a lot of foods. But I'm just saying we need to watch out. We
That
need
is
to
amazing.
start looking at those labels. If you're buying regular grocery store milk, make sure you're getting one without sugar.
Without sugar,
Better
sure.
yet, go pick up the raw milk from your local raw dairy.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. We're really almost short on time now, but I want to talk kids. I know there are parents out there, especially that have older kids, let's say kind of that have already started their own eating patterns, their own eating decisions. And parent says, "Hey, we want to change how we eat. We want to revolutionize, right? We want to get some of these good ingredients in there. But my 16-year-old is not going to change." Right? Or my 14-year-old, whatever, right? We started early, and so my kids don't know the difference, and they love carrots, and they love, but I've run into a lot of parents say, but I don't know how to change that. So tell me what you would tell a parent who says, right, well, my kid won't eat this or that. How are they supposed to, change how they eat?
Great. There are two parts to this equation. One is when you're at home, make a really good meal, one that you're proud of, one that you know is nourishing them.
Right.
And then the second part is let everything else go. You need to respect where they are. They want to feel included in the culture. They don't want to feel different.
Right.
If their friends are eating pizza, they want to eat pizza.
Sure.
And it's okay because they will come to their own realization in time, just like I did.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah.
I said, I grew up on the worst of it and ate it all. And when I felt the difference, that was the profound change. Your kids will trust that they will experience that too. They
Sure.
will notice the difference of how they feel after they've eaten a healthy meal that you've made at home, and trust that they'll feel the difference when they go out and have the junk food.
Right, and as soon as they have that same personal...
Yeah, I let my kids have their own experience, and I just smile so big inside when they come home and go, I don't feel well. I just ate a pizza.
my mother-in-law took my son when he was young to McDonald's. He was probably 2 or 3 or 4, not very old, and got him a Happy Meal, and that's something that we've never done. But anyway, I guess he took one bite from the hamburger and ate maybe 2 French fries, and he was like, "This is gross. I don't want to eat it."
Yeah.
And as a parent, I was like, just doing somersaults inside because I was like, hooray. Now, obviously, this is the same kid that will, eat a whole bag of jelly beans if they're left out. But I think that's definitely key is let them, I love that idea, let them have that experience. It's almost worse to say, hey, you have to eat this and you can't eat that, don't you think?
It's so much worse. Yeah. Child can't learn it's so much better if they can learn from their own experience than having you drill into their mind, don't eat it. And I especially don't like to use the word bad. I won't say that's a bad food. I'll say, how does that make you feel?
Okay.
Let them recognize it for themselves.
And have it go off of, how do you feel after you eat that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I know that Real Foods this summer is doing some children's cooking classes. I think it's really exciting. If you want to know more about it, definitely go to their webpage. But I think that's a great idea. I know that when I include my children in the cooking and in the buying of the food and going in and saying, hey, what's that funny looking vegetable? Maybe we should find a way to cook it.
Yep.
That almost becomes fun to them. And then they say, hey, and gardening, see, we talked with Rob last week, another great way, right, to get produce in our kids' diets, because they've grown it and now they want to eat it because they made it.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
You know, and so I think to putting it on this positive spin and saying, hey, kids, this is a way, whether they're 4 or whether they're 18, I think a way for them to really get hold of that.
It's so fun. Food is fun. It really
Food is fun.
And when kids plant it, when they pick it themselves, when they prepare it, they own it.
Yeah.
And they're so happy to share it. Let them get involved, and they will eat it.
Right.
They will. And just allow them that journey. I think cooking and eating is a life skill, and the sooner kids can learn how to cook and prepare their own food, how to grow their own food,
Right.
the better off they are. So that's why we do these cooking classes. That's why I love teaching children. It's so much fun. And what I love the most is when a parent comes up to me and says, my 10-year-old has made dinner every Sunday for 3 weeks because of you and your recipes. And
That's
that
awesome.
just makes me so happy
Yeah.
because kids can do it. We ought to let them do it.
And they're either going to make the ramen noodles or the mac and cheese in a box, or they're going to make something good. And so we might as well.
They're going to make
help them.
bacon wrapped chicken with creamy herbs. Cream.
Now,
I said that wrong.
when do you teach classes these days?
So the first time we'll have a cooking class is on June 14th, and it'll be during the daytime, and that's for kids. And I'll be teaching 3 classes in the summertime for the kids.
Good.
So I hope they'll come. And then, if anyone was piqued by the article that you read about preserving your youth, and we have a class tonight on beginner skincare.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
at 6:30 tonight at Real Foods Market here in Heber. And Laura Bradford is teaching that class. She's an esthetician, and she has the most beautiful skin. Trust me. When you see her skin, you will listen to every word she says. She knows what she's talking
Whatever
about.
you say, we will follow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to ask you, just by way of closing, do you have something favorite that you like to cook? I know this is a terrible question to ask. It's like someone that loves movies. What's your favorite movie? What is, if you had just your last, let's say your last meal. If you know it's your last meal, what are you going to cook? What are you going to eat?
My latest favorite, because I go through phases.
That's okay.
My latest favorite is Thai food. I am just so loving the different spices and herb blends.
Right.
And I love that everything is fresh. I love that you can do these different curries. It's very exotic. It's very fun. And I have a little motivation for that because I'm heading off to Thailand in a few weeks.
Awesome.
So I really wanted to discover their food and their culture. So that's my latest craze.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
In fact, I didn't say it, but that's really kind of our theme for the summer for the kids.
Thai food.
Exotic island food.
Oh, exotic island food,
yeah,
even better.
But I know the kids are going to love it, so don't worry.
You can do a tour of the islands and make food that way. Fantastic. Well, Leslie, I just want to thank you for being on. This has been fun. Like I say, maybe the fastest hour that I've had on the show already. So hopefully you'll be back, I'm sure. If this show keeps running, we're going to run into each other for sure. If you want to get a hold of Leslie or ask her any questions, definitely through Real Foods Market is the best way to do it, I think. And if you haven't been over there, I want you to go over there and check that place out anyway. It's a great thing to have in our community, a great place to go and to get questions answered. Everyone that works there is so nice and so friendly and very right. It's not a grocery store. You go in and you ask somebody something, they send you somewhere else, right? I remember the first time I went in, Ann gave me a whole tour of the store and showed me things, and so they love doing that kind of thing. Go check them out. Do you know the address? I should have looked that up. It's over there kind of by, if you know where Lava Corp is, it's across the street from there. It's just down the street from Rocky Mountain Middle School. I think it's 910 South.
It's 475 West and 910 South in Heber. Yeah, and it's close to the middle school.
Right.
It's kind of behind Walmart. Boy, have we confused everybody. 910 South and 475
West. Go check it out. Leslie, thanks for coming. Everybody out there, hopefully you enjoyed the show today. Get out, be healthy, be well. Do it for nothing else. Do it for the health.